one of the more difficult challenges is actually a painting like this. You have a lot of color going on, a lot of different levels of saturation. It overall feels lit. There's a lot of things that are at work here with the painting. But can you talk a little bit about color choices here?
Yeah, definitely I wanted to create the fun, kind of exciting environment of colors. Basically this painting is the first day of school. There's a lot of excitement among the students, and especially Mike and Sully. And how can I bring excitement and colorful colorfulness to this painting? So I used the monsters, other monster characters, body colors to bring colors into this set. And of course, daytime painting requires a lot more attention because it exposes a lot more than like a night scene like the previous painting. And you will have to showcase a lot of the colors. And the danger is the colors could go all over the place. But hopefully you can do a good enough job. And I think we'll talk more about it later, how to organize colors. But in this particular scene, again, this is still like, okay, I want to bring in this kind of a harmony. It really felt right. Like if I squint at it, nothing jumps out at me. Everything felt like it fits in terms of color. Of course, we're not talking about value. We're not talking about saturation, just the color. And it felt right to me.
That's interesting. So it does, we continually talk about squinting. Squinting in relationship to value. Squinting in relationship to temperature, I'd say. Edges. But overall, edges. But overall, it applies here too. Yep. Picking color, really, when you're squinting, what you're doing is you're simplifying, right? You're really just looking at the bigger picture as the overall impression of this. One thing that's interesting to me is the sky color. Like, the sky color is not necessarily something that I would say that I walk outside and I see in nature necessarily.
Yeah.
What is a little bit of the thinking behind this color choice?
This really was that's a good question. I wanted to push the color of the sky just in the same sense as to bring colors into the scene. Doesn't mean that I couldn't do a normal blue sky like this. This probably is a little more the color of sky that we're used to. The interesting thing is that I'm actually cheating the exposure here. Like this is a lot more overexposed sort of a scene where the sky still stays, saturated and dark. That means I'm exposed more on the light side, which is not what I'm doing and on the ground level on the characters. But again, why I picked this color versus this blue, I have to say it was because of the color balance that I felt it was right.
Let's look at these paintings side by side. I mean, I think to me at least, and I didn't make this painting. I'm just enjoying this painting just like everyone else, kind of as a viewer. And I have to say, when I look at them side by side, there's I clearly gravitate to the one on the left with the kind of turquoise sky. One more thing I wanted to look at is kind of squinting. What's the equivalent of squinting? If we squinted at these paintings, really at looking at these overall impressions. And what I really feel like is it really connects with this color of Sully. Overall, what I thought was really great that you did here is you didn't introduce a new color unless you had to. For as much color as here, you feel like things are living in families. Like you really squint at this and you're seeing families of color show up. That's really nice. The color of the monster in the foreground relates to the color of the tree and the building. Sully relates to the sky. There is a lot of kind of balance there that I feel. Is that something like, as you were painting this, were you playing with different colors or did it?
I was definitely playing with a lot of different colors. Yeah. I think in a way, at the end of the day, like you're saying, if everything feels like it fits, as a balance. And then again, this is somewhat subjective, but you have to do it. You have to do sort of thumbnail, pass enough to understand that you're exhausting all the options to get to the best option you have. And I think I arrived at this turquoise color of the sky.
Yeah, it's really a great choice. In my opinion, like it looks, because believe me, every opportunity I have to point something out that Dice has done wrong, I'll take advantage of. But I gotta say, it's an interesting choice. That the reason why I ask about it so much too is because it's a choice I might not have made. So it's great. Let's look at another example from Monsters. Let's look at this painting. One thing I wanted to talk about in this painting is the strong value structure and its relationship to color. So, we are talking about color. I think overall, a lot of people get very distracted, including myself, with color and how much color is capable of doing. But I've always felt like something that you're really good at, but not a lot of people kind of recognize, is this luminosity that is actually related to its value more than its color. So if we looked at this, just its value structure, I gotta say, it still feels lit. It still feels like it retains the feeling of the painting. Obviously, the question becomes, then what is color adding? And color is really adding this feeling of warmth that they're looking at, and this feeling of them being outside looking into a warm space that you don't get as much here.
Right.
But it does feel luminous. It does feel lit. This is where temperature is really influencing a lot of the storytelling here. Can you talk us a little bit through color versus value, or color and value, not versus, because they are kind of one and the same thing. But.
Yeah, like you're saying, without value structures working, your colors would never ever work, right? Because colors, one important component of a color is value. So, of course, you have to make sure it works in the value structure and it's lit. But like you're saying, you can add so much to the picture by introducing color. Like in this case, I'm playing with cool and warm, and like you're saying, clearly they're not in the space that they're looking at. And they're outside in this cool environment with the moonlight shining on them, but they're looking into this separate environment because their body is pretty much separated by these two lights, warm light and cool light. And like you said, it adds to it. It adds to the story. It makes you want to look at what are they looking at. It makes you wonder.
Also, one interesting thing that, in terms of lighting, that's great to talk about here is Sully, lighting Sully. Sully's overall this blue character, and he's getting hit by this warm light and rim lit by this cool light. It's really interesting. This is where, to me, the choices about temperature are key. So you look at his belly and kind of his chin. Would I describe that as warm light? Yes, in this context, absolutely. And as things move into the shadow, I can see it gets cooler. But there's still kind of a bluish color. It's still overall cool. It's just in relationship to each other. One is warmer than the other. So if you look at all the characters, you'll see the truth in that. Overall, I'd say, like, for instance, if I look at Dawn, who's the little red character, you see that there's a warm, cool relationship in the shadow versus light side. And that is always, I think, being consistent in its relationship from light to shadow, and its temperature and value relationship is key to staying consistent. Like, it's interesting to me, like this purple panel that's in front. I feel like the purple is not necessarily the total local color of it, but it's being influenced by this warm light. It's not like I can see necessarily. I guess you can see up in the top left corner the shadow color of it. But overall, those are just lit panels. I feel like it's warm. And a lot of that is also that neutral gray pane, window pane stuff that is showing the true influence of that light, that warm light versus the cool light. It's really interesting painting to study. I think it's deceptively simple. But there's really, if you understand this, I feel like you'll be able to light a lot of different situations. again. So let's look at another, I liked, we were picking examples and a lot of the examples are really difficult paintings to achieve out of the box because of the number of colors that you're having to control. This is very similar to the monsters painting outdoors where in the sunlight where you have a lot of different colors to play with.
Yeah, in this particular one, I think that the valley is working. It's a little bit easier because all the characters are in shadow, except for Mike. But again, you still have to contain all the characters in the environment. Like if you look at this red monster in the foreground, his lower side of the body is lit by the sun, so you get this warm color. But the rest of his body is getting this kind of blue fill influence, sky influence. And like Robert was saying, he's a red character, so you just have to make sure the relationship works. It's not so much that, it's always warm color because the light source is warm. No, local color will heavily influence the way it'll look too. So you just have to make sure within this local colors, you know where it's lit has the influence of the light source. If it's cool light source, then it's going to get cooler. Doesn't mean it's going to be cool in relation to other things, because other things you're comparing to may have a different local color. So that's really where it gets tricky. But if you are really, if you stay true to the relationship within the object, then you'll be fine.
Absolutely. And I think too, again, squint at this painting, take a look at it, and you'll see, one thing that I'm noticing with these special multiple characters is a lot of times a color doesn't exist in isolation. Like this orange that you're using exists in different places throughout the painting. Variations of each other, but very much in the same family. Same with the blues and the greens, and even the kind of warm yellows. Nothing really lives in just one part of the painting. We're kind of balancing it out throughout the composition. This is another painting, the cover of the Toy Story 3 art book. That's a lot of color here.
Yeah, I would say this is one of the hardest paintings in a way in terms of organizing the colors, because unlike some of the other ones that we looked at that are more of a low light situation, then if you squint, everything kind of falls into darkness or something. It's pretty much an entire room is exposed, so you're really seeing every color, and it's very easy to get into this garish, oversaturated scene if you're not careful, right? So again, if you squint at it, you just have to make sure nothing jumps out uncomfortably to break your scene, and it's always playing with the relationship, staying consistent with the relationship. If they're getting this blue fill light on the shadow side, and if they're getting this kind of warmer sunlight from the other side of the room, you just have to be very consistent. And if it's consistent, they start to sit in the same space, and their local colors won't look out of whack.
Great.
Here's another one. It's in a darker environment, but pretty much overexposed too, so you're still seeing a lot of colors. Again, as long as lighting stays in place, the value structure is in place, and if you squint at it, there's no distinct colors that are... I'm not saying no colors should jump, but it's more like none of them should jump out of your expectations. So in this case, there's a bit of a color symbolism that we did on Toy Story 3 with the blue, and so blue, sort of luminous blue of the curtain and all that stuff, the table, it's kind of intentional. But other than that, everything feels like it fits in place, and that's what you want to do.